Well, here we are again. We're in a different in the studio. I mean, I obviously Nick Hoffman and I do a prime time right here in the spot, but it's the first time since Daniel set up in this new configuration. And I actually like hearing myself. So I sound pretty good with the big screen in front of me. I look pretty good. Oh, Tony B's over there laughing at me. As we are, thank you. Center cut into the screen. Juan Cotto touching bases with you live. Well, we're not live. We are here at the historic Columbia City Theater on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio World. Juan on Rainier, where I have run up and down on these streets for now a lot of decades. I don't want to get into all that, but I'm extremely excited. A gentleman who obviously I've known for quite some time, and boy, it seems like in these political campaigns, a lot of the candidates I've known for quite some time. I don't know if that just shares the experience that I have of now. I guess Tony, I am now a community elder. A young woman at the University of Washington, she said to me when I was making a presentation at the Graduate School of Public Affairs, well, you being a community elder. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not an elder yet. That's George Griffin and Nate Miles and those guys. I'm still a young guy. But we have Eddie Lin, who was the top vote getter in the primary last week. And I don't know if that was a surprise. I'm not sure what the poll said, but I'm sure the poll that candidate Lin said was that they were going to do very well, and you did. Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio.
Thank you so much, Juan. Yeah, no, we were surprised. There were no polls. We were getting great feedback out door knocking and just talking to voters in different community spaces, and so we were hopeful that we're going to do well, but far exceeded our expectations, and yeah, just super excited to move on to the general.
Tell me this, and as a person who's done it, I think 4 times, and not quite successful, but there is no unsuccessful campaign. Anytime you get yourself out there and introduce yourself to the community, you're doing a community good. So you have to look at that way. But from a competitive standpoint, I guess I haven't been successful. But I think about my own mind why I wanted to do this and why do you put yourself up to the scrutiny. And it's the same question that I asked Tanya Wu. It's the same question that I asked John Arthur Wilson and Malahan when he was here, and Rory O'Sullivan. And I'm going to ask that to you. I mean, what makes you get up one morning and say, you know something, I'm going to run for the Seattle City Council?
Yeah, that is a wonderful question. And I think, from an overarching level, I think it's the feeling that, how can you best serve your community? And I think that's probably pretty consistent about a lot of people that run. In our race for District 2, we're all first-time candidates. And, I think that there was pretty consistent similarities in terms of our values. Everybody is doing it for the right reasons. And I think that's because, I think we see a need, and, it was unexpected to have this vacancy, but, once there was this vacancy, I think we're just all doing doing what we can to serve the community. And, just felt really good about, my favorite part about being out there is just talking to people. And I think getting to know, having a deeper connection with the community. And so just really enjoyed my time so far.
That's the fun thing about it is all the people you get to meet, obviously, and it's such a community connection. And so many people that you grew up here with, that you've lived with, you see the neighborhood. Tell us about some of the conversations that you've had in the community, and tell us about some of the probably some of the old relationships you've had a chance to meet as well.
Right. So I didn't grow up here. I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in North Carolina, and New England, Massachusetts, Connecticut. Did college in Minnesota, and then came out here as I was finishing up college in 1998. So really, kind of my adult life, have lived here, raised our kids on Beacon Hill. I mean, it's interesting. I think just at the doors, there's a couple things. One, I think a lot of the top issues that I think we all sort of know what those issues are, whether it's, just the affordability issues, housing, homelessness, public safety, transportation, safety on Rainier and MLK. And so, I don't think it's a surprise necessarily what, the community cares about. I think that the question for us is, how do we solve these, really difficult, thorny issues, and how do we come together as a community? I think what has been, rewarding for me is just getting to know, talking to so many people that are giving back to their community, our community, in so many different ways. I mean, we just have a lot of amazing leaders in District 2. I don't know if it's like that everywhere in the city, but I know that in District 2, we just have so many elders in our community that have been doing the work for a long time. We have, the next generation of leaders, people that are doing it today. And that's just been, really, really exciting to, learn about and build those connections. And I think the job of the District 2 City Council member is really just to empower the people that are already giving back to our community, that are doing this important work, helping them, remove the barriers that, that city government sometimes places in front of people, and get them, help these leaders connected to city resources.
And you talked about that from the generational perspective, and I touched on it earlier, a little bit humorously, but certainly in regards to the generational aspect. It seems that in the city of Seattle, in particular, it seems far more noticeable now. The electorate is a little younger now. I think a lot of people that have been attracted to the city of Seattle are younger, and they're starting their families here. This has become a destination point, and certainly the issues, and you all discussed them and debated them during the city council elections of what a larger populace means. But the electorate, certainly it tends to skew a little bit younger, tends to be a little bit more progressive, and at least that's what the consultants were telling me. What you are a candidate. And it was interesting. We had Roy O'Sullivan here, and we were talking about his race for attorney general. And Roy was like, "I am a progressive." I mean, he flat out is. Yeah. I didn't get that sense from you, and I was wondering how do you define yourself in that range? And as where do you define yourself at all? You see yourself as a consummate public leader, and you're able to bridge that gap.
I do consider myself a progressive. I think that term carries a lot of meaning. Different people ascribe different meanings to it. And I do not, what I would say is I don't consider myself ideological. I consider myself a progressive in terms of values. And this is where I think we share a lot of values in our city, within District 2, things around compassion, caring for the most marginalized, caring about racial equity, just caring for each other. And it's more about how do we, what are the solutions that we're bringing to the table, and how are we going to, bring our community together. And some of these are difficult issues, things around like, traffic safety and bikes versus cars. And, there's going to be tension within our community. How do we, we were the fastest growing city for a decade. We surpassed 800,000. We're probably going to surpass San Francisco in size of population soon.
And that's amazing to be, for those who grew up here.
Yeah.
To be, I mean, San Francisco. And when I first went to San Francisco, I mean, it felt a lot like New York City in many aspects, just because of the density, right, and because this city slowly and surely is starting to become that way.
Right, absolutely. And San Francisco is a lot more dense than we are, even just because in square miles they're a lot smaller. But just in raw numbers in terms of population, we're about to exceed them. But I think us.
Our football team is better though.
Absolutely, yeah. Just listened to a great show today about the Legion of Boom on KUOW. I think there's a new book out. Amazing. It's fun to listen back to those times. But, I think there's no way that we're going to not be impacted when we grow that quickly. And I think that, we feel it in terms of density. We feel it in terms of sort of, traffic on the roads. And we definitely feel it in terms of affordability, right? I mean, housing costs have skyrocketed because we have really strong employers here. And people, people have wealth. And it's driving up the cost. And so for those who don't have those great jobs or high paying jobs, fixed income seniors, right, who maybe have lived here their whole lives and worked hard and now have a pension or Social Security, but they don't have that, high paying tech job, but they're paying increased property taxes. They're paying those higher utility costs and, higher prices at the pump and at the grocery store. And so, how do I think we all feel the affordability. Some of us, can weather it more than others, but, we see folks on the street because of our rising cost of housing. And we see families getting pushed out of Seattle. We have the second least number of children in Seattle for a major city, second only to San Francisco. At the same time, we have the second most millionaires per capita, second only to San Francisco. We also have the second most children in private school, second only to San Francisco. And so I think we see, that our city kind of transforming and not necessarily for the better in many ways when we become sort of the city of kind of haves and have-nots, and people that have lived here their whole lives are getting pushed out. And so, certainly want to do what I can to address the affordability, and housing deficits that we're facing. But these are tricky issues, and there's certain things we can do locally, but there are also these major statewide and national factors that are also impacting us here.
Tell me about you. Tell me about where you're not a local person. You grew up a little bit out of town. Tell us a little about your story. Give us a little bit more in depth on where you came from, how you ended up here, and what makes Seattle a place that has allowed you to settle your life down here.
Yeah. So I grew up in Durham, North Carolina. My parents were an interracial marriage. They got married shortly after Loving versus Virginia. There were not a lot of. My dad immigrated from Taiwan. My mom is white from Massachusetts, and they met in Durham. And so there was not a strong Asian American community growing up. There was not a lot of mixed race families there, and so I grew up sort of a lot of times sort of like trying to figure out where I fit in to sort of the our oftentimes not great racial dynamics in the U.S.
How was that racial dynamic for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was tricky to navigate. We were, in a sense, it was my brother and I. He's 4 years older than me, and we were just trying to see, like, we had our friends, and mostly through sports, actually, and that is one great thing about sports is I think it crosses racial lines, and it allows people, kids of all backgrounds to come together and form relationships.
I want to call him great, and I also want to call him disgraced Olympic sprinter Ben Johnson from Canada. Mm-hmm. And he talked about his move up north from the islands of Jamaica when he went to Canada. And they were bullied and they were picked on in their school. Mm-hmm. And one day he challenged a guy to a 100-meter sprint or 100-yard sprint. Mm-hmm. And the boys that were picking on him all lined up, and they raced the sprint. And there was a number of the school kids around watching it, and he beat them. Mm-hmm. And he said they never messed with him again.
For sure. I mean, sports again, for both my brother and I were big parts about how we sort of were kind of integrated, accepted into sort of the local friend groups and community. And, but I think I also internalized some of the, discrimination and racism towards Asian Americans, towards Chinese. My dad was an immigrant, and he didn't really know what it was like for us as kids to grow up in the U.S. I think my parents struggled to navigate their own cultural differences. They, eventually were on and again, off again, eventually got divorced. And I think it's hard to navigate these cultural barriers. I think
it's interesting because growing up here, my name's Juan Cotto. My mother's Black, my father's Puerto Rican. Mm-hmm. But here, when we got teased, they would say, you Mexicans, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, excuse me, I'm not Mexican, I'm Puerto Rican. And they would start, ripping into that. But interesting, I mean, you say your father's from Taiwan. Mm-hmm. Did you catch that people, did they differentiate? I mean, did they understand that you were Taiwanese and not Chinese or Japanese?
No, not really. I mean, maybe Chinese. And my dad he's actually kind of mixed Taiwanese Chinese because he was born in China and his mom was Chinese and his dad was Taiwanese. And, and I don't know if I even really knew much of the difference back growing up, again, because it was just my dad. There wasn't a larger sort of community that I was a part of that, taught me the history. And so it's something that I really had to kind of pursue later in life in college. It's why I studied East Asian studies, was to try to learn some of the history of my father's family and to go study abroad in China. But yeah, there's nothing culturally back then. You had Bruce Lee and some other sort of people in the media, and that was about it, right? That was the sort of the limit of kind of what you could imagine or see in terms of a role model. And so that's a hard thing for kids, and that's part of what excited me to move here to Seattle, is to see such a robust Asian American community, and for kids to see leaders from all the way up to the governor's office who might look like them, and understand their experience. And I just think I really want to make sure that kids today feel seen. And that they see, a whole range of role models. So,
when did you make that move to Seattle? When did you come from the East
Coast? So after I hadn't quite graduated, but I met my wife in college. We didn't get married right away, but we moved. That was McAllister College in St. Paul, Minnesota. Mm-hmm. So we moved out here in 1998, and yeah, I mean, we just kind of fell in love with it right away for a whole range of reasons, just the beauty, the nature, the quirky kind of artist subcultures, so I started off, my first job here was as a bike messenger, and, learning about bike messenger culture and community, it's its own. So yeah, we fell in love with the place. But certainly, part of it was the strong Asian American community that was just exciting to see and be a part of. And,
he is Eddie Lin, and he is a candidate who came through the primary in Seattle's primary in the District 2 election with the Southeast Seattle, and he had the most primary votes. So he's going to be taking that into the general, which will be on November 2nd. And he is here today on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, on Juan on Rainier. I'm getting a lot of mail. It's amazing how these schools market themselves. So this is just a personal thing between you and me. I'm getting a lot of mail. My son is 17. He's a senior at O'Day High School. We're getting a lot of mail from McAllister. Sell me on McAllister. Sell me on McAllister. That's why I'm familiar with it. I'm getting mail.
Well, so I applied to McAllister sort of sight unseen. I didn't go visit it, but at the time, they actually had the largest endowment of any college in the country, which meant they had an amazing financial aid package. I think their endowment, they had this Reader's Digest. The founder of Reader's Digest, which is no longer a thing, but it was a thing 20, 30 years ago, made this endowment pledge. But they have a really strong international studies program. They had a really strong environmental studies, just a strong liberal arts college, and just a wonderful community. A lot of artists, a lot of there's also like a really strong biology program. But some of the friends I developed there just are lifelong friends, and I think that it's a lot of good people, a lot of people that really care about their community that choose to go there. And what's interesting is there's actually a lot of McAllister alumni here in Seattle. Supposedly after the Twin Cities, we have the second most alumni for McAllister here in Seattle. And I just think there's a lot of similarities between the Twin Cities and Seattle in terms of like size and a little bit of culture, but yeah, it's a great place.
That's right. Either you like Prince or Jimi Hendrix. It's some of the, what was your major? What did you study?
So I did East Asian studies, which was mostly like Chinese, Japanese history, some Chinese language, and then got to do a study abroad.
It's soul stirring, and it is almost cathartic to learn about yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of, how about your wife? What did she study?
She was Spanish and art, and so yeah, she also did international, study abroad.
And you two met on campus?
We met on campus. Yep, it's a small campus, a tight community. And,
how many students? What's the student population?
About 2,000. Yeah.
I love small schools. I went to Western Oregon, down in Monmouth, Oregon, and it's about 3,500, 4,000 students. It was about 3,500 when I was there.
Yeah.
And it's such a unique environment, and like you said, you have that close connection.
Yeah.
And so you end up in Seattle.
Yep.
And that was in the early 2000s.
Yeah, 98 was when he first moved out. Yeah.
A young man named Juan Cotto was running for the state legislature at that time.
Wow.
He ended up, a lady by the name of Sharon Tomiko Santos won that seat, and Sharon Tomiko Santos was still there.
Yeah, it's going strong. Wow, I didn't know you ran that long ago.
Yeah, it was. I was 12.
Yeah.
So what have you the last 20 years? And you talk about a city that's changed. You talk about about the Twin Cities in Minneapolis and the Midwest. Of also, you think about the change that has happened there. But this is a city that's changed in the last 20 years. And tell us how you and your wife migrated through that whole progression.
Yeah, so we were here for a few years. My wife did her master's in teaching at UW, and she graduated in 2001. And that was around the time that I finished up my college because I was still finishing up some credits. And at the time, we actually decided to move down to Oakland for 5 years. And I was still doing just kind of different jobs, whether bike messenger or working at the UW bookstore or bakery. But we went down to Oakland for 5 years, loved it down there. She got her started teaching, and I started working at law firms. I just went through a temp agency, was like a receptionist at a law firm, and then a legal secretary. And we had our first kid down in Oakland, and we wanted to settle down there, but it was during the housing boom. And on a secretary salary and a young educator salary, we just couldn't afford to live down there. And so I applied to law school, got accepted to Seattle U. So we moved back up here. And that's when, we moved to Beacon Hill, started raising our kids, one kid, and then a second kid during law school. And I graduated in 2009 during kind of the downturn, but I was fortunate to get a job at a large law firm, Perkins Coie. It's been in the news a lot because
a little bit.
The feds. And it was a great law firm. I never thought of myself as going to a big law firm. What inspired me to go to law school is I worked at a law firm in San Francisco that represented labor unions, and they did other kind of progressive lawsuits like voters' rights. And it just inspired me. But when I was in law school, it's just like I couldn't find those jobs. Those are few and far between. Cut my teeth learning the law at Perkins for 8 years, became a real estate lawyer, did some land use, did some energy law. And then, I applied to the city attorney's office 3 different times, just because I had a friend that worked there, said it was a great place to work, and finally got a job there on the 3rd try, and been there since 2017. Did real estate for the city for large projects like the waterfront project or like the Northgate pedestrian bike bridge, things like that. And then about 6 years ago, transitioned to do full-time working on affordable housing, working with the Office of Housing. And that's what I've been focused on. And, in many ways is kind of what inspired me to run, was just with the housing costs, and just, the Office of Housing does really good work in the affordable space, but the need continues to grow. And that's just because, 75% of our land for many years has been sort of restricted as single family zoning. And we just put a lot of barriers on housing development. And so really just knowing that there's a lot more that we need to be doing to address the housing deficit that we face. And when there was this unexpected vacancy, just figured, hey, there's something I have about, sort of knowledge, a value add that I could contribute here. And that's why I jumped in.
I guess the obvious question I have to ask you is this: just looking back on your start, what has, and this is serious, is my youngest brother also, he had a very, very similar path. He was also a bike messenger. Because I mean, in that, we think about that in terms of, especially in urban places and how exhilarating at times that can be, and also how dangerous it can be, I guess, in some occasions. What did you take away from being a bike delivery person that has helped you on this campaign?
Most importantly is to wear your helmet. I did have a bad accident doing they have a race called like the Dead Baby Downhill race, and they just had that this past weekend. But when you're young and you don't think about those things, but thankfully I had that helmet on, and otherwise it would have been a very different future for me. But I think for me, when we moved here in '98, so I was a bike messenger, and we didn't have a lot of expenses. We had like a card table for furniture, and my wife, when she first came out here, she was an AmeriCorps, and so AmeriCorps, you're getting like $700 a month or some stipend, and with some food stamps. But we were still able to get by, right? And you saw other people, it was expensive. It wasn't cheap, but at the same time, you could make ends meet, and artists could still afford to live here, and baristas, and that's a big part of what we loved about here was just all the quirky communities, all the diversity, and that is sadly we're seeing that get pushed out.
It's a shame. It is a shame. It is a shame. What has your wife done? She take care of the family?
Yeah, so she's been a teacher.
Still teaching.
She still teaches. Yeah, so she's started teaching right away. And then the other thing that has always been for us as a family is she got very involved in her union down in Oakland right away. They actually underwent what was one of the, at the time, the largest sort of state bailout in history. There's like $100 million deficit, and they got taken over by a state administrator. And so kind of like early on saw the importance of like, in public education as teachers, as educators, what you do in your classroom is important, but it's like so much happens outside of the classroom, whether it's in the school building or what's happening at the district level. And so it's like, if you really care about public education, you kind of advocate on a larger level. And so she's been involved in her union ever since, and including when we moved back up here, and I got involved in advocacy as a parent, as like legislative chair for like Seattle Council PTSA, and then she stepped into leadership in her union. So she was president of Seattle Education Association from 2020 to 2024 during COVID, really difficult time, and just saw what it took for her to step into that leadership role, to have to lead in situations where there were no good answers. There was just tough decisions, and our community was divided on a lot of different things. And so saw her do that, and it was also just a great way to kind of get more connected with the labor world through her. So yeah, but now she's out of that role. She turned out, so now she's teaching it back at on Beacon Hill. She's at Mercer Middle School,
and still a mom and wife.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a family affair running for office.
Hey boy, do you know about that? Isn't that the truth? And we will come back and talk more about that with Eddie Lin on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. We'll be back in about 3 minutes.
Speak up, Seattle. We are Rainier Avenue Radio.world, the station that cares.
A new law is helping people save more money on prescription drug costs. You may also be able to save with Medicare's Extra Help program. Your premium cost can be zero and your out-of-pocket expenses are low. Who should apply? Single individuals earning less than $23,000 a year or married couples earning less than $31,000 a year. Even if you don't think you qualify, you should still check out this program. Visit ssa.gov/extra help. Medicare costs are covered by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Women are not an homogenous group.
We face discrimination differently depending on factors such as ethnicity, age, socioeconomic status, and more.
Rainier Avenue Radio is proud to amplify women's voices.
They are the experts of their own lives, initiating conversations within their community about challenges they face, the solutions they're working on, and the opportunities they see.
Please join us this Sunday from 2 to 5 for Women's Voices on Air. We know our challenges. We are the experts of our lives.
We are master multitaskers, prioritizing our family, friends, and our faith above our own needs.
Our needs and voices are too often overlooked.
Please join us this Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. for Women's Voices on Air.
We tell our stories in our own way.
We must all remain committed to slow the spread of coronavirus, taking care of ourselves and not putting others in harm's way, especially those already at higher risk of getting seriously ill, including people over 65 or those with underlying medical conditions. If you must be out, avoid crowded areas, stay 6 feet or 2 arm lengths away from others, and wear a face covering. Wash hands frequently with soap and water for 20 seconds, especially after being in public spaces. Avoid touching your face, cough or sneeze in a tissue, then throw it away. Disinfect frequently touched objects. And if you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and soreness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. Slowing coronavirus means taking care of ourselves while also protecting others. Even if you're not at high risk, these steps should be taken to help slow the spread of coronavirus. We are all in this together.
This is Brenda Charles Edwards, host of Seniors Matter. Join me every week to get information on activities and issues that impact the lives of older adults and their families. That's Seniors Matter every week on Rainier Avenue Radio.
So I needed to check my kids' immunization records for their school. My doctor told me I could get them quickly online, but I couldn't figure out how. Thankfully, I could turn to Link to Care WA for help. With Link to Care WA, I was able to learn how to use online health portals, use telehealth to talk to my doctor virtually, and even apply for jobs online. I called their free hotline and got help from a real person. Call Link to Care WA at 866-757-1832 or visit linktocarewa.org.
You know you can't get enough of Rainier Avenue Radio.
Little headset, large headset on photo touching bases with you from the historic Columbia City Theater, the remnants of Tony B's February Call to Conscious Black History Month celebration. Got a lot of stuff in here that we utilize, and and if you were to come here in February, this place was an actual museum. I cannot believe how he transforms the entire building into a Black History Month museum. It's incredible. I'm sure he'll do it again in February. And we have with us today Eddie Lin, who is a candidate. Not only is he a candidate, but he got the most votes coming out of the primary for District 2 here. And we have 7 district seats, 2 at-large seats. District 2 is quite well known. The current mayor of the city of Seattle, Bruce Terrell, sat in this very seat in District 2. This is Southeast Seattle. This is gritty. This is the gritty neighborhoods of Seattle and Southeast. Even kind of running up into the central area a little bit. I think I saw some yard signs and different things. It goes all the way up, I think, to Jackson. Is Jackson the cutoff point?
Yeah, it kind of meanders a little bit. So I-90, sort of more east, is the cutoff, and then CID, and then it goes up to Cherry to 12th. So like Yesler Terrace is also a little bit, just a little.
And I don't know where you're listening from, but when you run into those dudes that you're just kind of run into them and you smile and you nod and you're just a little tiny bit intimidated. That's the kind of grittiness we're talking about down here in Southeast Seattle. And I'm very, very excited to have him on here. And one of our, there we go, he drew it, Daniel Bellis, ladies and gentlemen.
I think it's been updated since that one. Sorry, there's because they redistricted, must have been in 2020. But
that is, and that of course is where the headquarters for your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio, is. Southeast Seattle also includes Rainier Beach High School, the Vikings, and we got that legendary high school with DeJounte Murray and a baby boy, and now Josh Connerly. There we go. Josh Connerly now of the Washington Redskins. We're talking South Seattle, man. That's Hazel Street. That's where yours truly is from, down there in the South End. Eddie, the Seattle City Council. I want to come up with a word. Daniel and I will come up with a word. One word exercise in regards to the integrity and reputation of the Seattle City Council. I don't think it would be a very positive word. I think that the Seattle City Council has had its issues in terms of communication. There have been people who have left midterm for a variety of different reasons, health challenges, and people say that these people don't play fair with me in the sandbox, and they end up leaving the city council. Geez, and I mean, then you look at the elections. I mean, one of the stalwarts last week, Sarah Nelson, and she is in a major deficit in her race. And there has been a number of comments that have been levied against the Seattle City Council over the last 10 years in particular, but maybe going back the last 15. It has had a contentious relationship with several mayors. And then, of course, obviously, the things that we've seen, I mean, with homelessness and with crime and lawsuits against the police department and a variety of different things that have pushed people to a point where they're no longer wanting to do business in Seattle and actually have left the city. And a lot of when you talk to those folks, if we were to do sort of an exit interview, when you chat with them, the first thing they will tell you is it was because of the city council. And now here is Eddie Lin, who it comes across as a very intelligent young man, a person I wouldn't say is overly ambitious. You don't come across as an activist type. And here you are wanting to take on the challenge of being on this particular board of directors, which is the Seattle City Council. Tell us in your perspective, you feel a little bit intimidated by all this?
Not overly intimidated. I mean, so I have had the pleasure of working in the city attorney's office for the past 8 years. And so you get a good insight in just how city government works. And we advise, or I've had the opportunity to advise city council mostly through the permanent legislative staff. It's called council central staff. So, advise from issues from time to time, and had the chance to advise the mayor's office on housing related issues from time to time. But I will say to your original kind of point, I do think we have large problems in the city. They're complicated ones. I do think they require more listening rather than sort of talking, and they require us coming together as a community, and that includes businesses and labor and nonprofits and activists and all of us, and I think, again, kind of we were chatting earlier, I think there's more that brings us together than divides us, at least in our values. I think, and so I would like to do what I can to help our community kind of find consensus and find a path forward through some of these tricky issues. I think city council, for whatever reason, I think, people see kind of the city council as responsible for a lot of the city problems, even though it is oftentimes the mayor's office that has a lot more sort of power in implementation of things. But I think, you get to go give public comment to city council. You don't get to go give public comment to the mayor's office in the same way. And so I just think there's more sort of in some ways feedback and access to city council. And so, there's a lot of heat directed towards them. It's not going to be easy by any means. And that's why I just think it's so important to make sure that you're listening to folks. I mean, people are right to be frustrated, and they are especially have a right to be frustrated if you're not even listening and showing up. I mean, we're not going to agree on everything, but I think as a council member, you almost have to go above and beyond to people that disagree with you to make sure you're hearing them out. It's easy to, if everybody, your supporters, it's easy to listen to them and agree with them, right? You're already on the same page. It's about doing the hard work of listening and reaching out to people that, maybe aren't going to immediately agree with you and seeing, hey, maybe we can find common ground here.
In the history of our city, and I want to say I'm starting to sound like my grandparents. Well, when I was growing up, but when I was a young person, we had a city council that had at-large districts throughout the entire city. We had 9 city council members that were elected in the same, the basic same contiguous voting that the mayor was. And you had, I can't remember how the elections broke down, but they broke down the district. You had 9 people citywide. And the idea was, geez, I can go to any one of the 9, and they had to be responsive to me. And I think about a city of 800,000 people. I think, geez, is that realistic today? I don't know. But that was the whole idea, was that I could go to any one of those 9. And certainly, we had a Sam Smith, howdy neighbor, and we had George Benson and running his little store, and he was on the city council, and Sue Donaldson and Jane Nolan and Martha Cho. And you had these people that were, they were, community leaders. They were very, very cordial. They were engaging. Tom Weeks, and they were, who was a consummate policy wonk. But and they seemed, and I'm not going to say there wasn't disagreements, and I'm not going to say there wasn't, at times contention, but they seemed to handle their business differently. Now, over the last 20 or so years, we had the change to the district elections, lowered the bar a little bit, as it's not as expensive to run for office, which broadened the pool. Then you throw in the vouchers that have given people the opportunity to run for office, and you attract a different way of going out and getting dollars to pay for it. It's expanded the opportunity, and it's really, in my opinion, and I would like to get your thoughts on this. I mean, it's changed the council, but has that also changed the tenor of the council in terms of, I just don't remember the types of disagreements and the types of situations. I don't remember the types of people coming in, and we had just recently had this conversation about people coming in and how they act in front of the city council, and a lot of the comments, and Sarah Nelson having to shut down the meetings, and then she is scolded by some of the activist community for shutting down the meetings or asking people to leave. And they say that that's their right to protest, but I some of the things that are said at those meetings, I don't know if it's their right to say that. And I'm just wondering your thoughts. I mean, has the district wide or this move to district elections, has that changed some of this?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's hard to know, because I think there's so many factors happening all at once that are affecting our local discourse and local politics. And I think, some of the biggest ones are social media, right? I just think that has changed sort of how we interact with each other, how information is spread, what is going on at the national political level. I mean, obviously, before Donald Trump, the discourse was very different. And now things that, just have been normalized that, 10 years ago, you would think would never have been normalized in politics. And so, yeah, I think our politics have gotten more and more divisive. I think COVID maybe didn't help either, just because I think it's really important to see people face to face. And that's what I really appreciate about like door knocking and the community forums. And, it's important to have other means of access as well. But I do think it's and even with public comment, there's sort of this separation, because the commenter is way down there and the city council's up kind of sitting on the dais. I think when you're sitting close and face to face, it's a lot harder to be sort of, insensitive. I think you see somebody for the whole person they might be. And, I think we have every right to have very hard disagreements around policy. But I think it's not helpful for the community to make things personal. And I just, I want to encourage people, and this is for me too. I got to remind myself sometimes, like, let's not make this personal. There's a lot of good people that care about our community, and we're not going to agree on everything. We're going to probably disagree on some, important issues, right? I mean, the issues affecting our community. People are living on the streets. People are dealing with gun violence. These are, real potential life and death issues. And so they're serious. And so it's understandable why emotions run high. But I don't think we solve problems. And people should feel free to express their frustration and anger. But I just, let's make it, try to make it positive. I mean, in the sense of, let's try to be solution oriented. If possible, constructive feedback rather than just tearing people down.
What can Eddie Lin do? You can't go out and change 9 other people. That's not your job. Your job's not to change the electorate. Your job is to have sensible public policy discussions and then represent the community for the public good. But there is a decorum. What can Eddie Lin do if elected that can help stabilize some of that decorum and public conversation and public discourse?
I mean, I think the most important thing to do is to listen first. I was listening to some podcasts, and they're saying the most important thing if you want to change somebody else's mind is to listen first, right? Because, and I think if you really take the time, that kind of shows that you have an open mind, and it hopefully, helps them also maybe say, hey, because that's at the end of the day, people want to feel heard. They want to be heard, right? And I think that helps our community. It also improves the dialogue. It improves the information sharing. If we actually don't come into a conversation with the assumption that, I'm going to teach you what is right. If we come into the conversation with an open mind, that doesn't mean that, we're going to give up. I think we have to maintain our core values around, seeing the humanity each other, seeing, helping the most in need. But we don't need to come into these conversations with preconceived ideas about, either thoughts about the person, who they are, or necessarily their policy ideas.
Eddie, have you thought about this from this perspective? And I'm going to ask you about the results of some of the primary elections. And many people have pointed out to me, Juan, 2 years ago, the primary results were far different than what happened in the general, I guess. I mean, there was a couple of people who were able to turn them around. But think about, let's just say hypothetically, you could be with Kathy Moore stepping down. You could be coming on. We have Deborah Juarez, my buddy Deborah Juarez. She will be on Rainier pretty soon here. She made the commitment to come on. She will be coming on here pretty soon. And then we could have Sarah Nelson, the council president. She is in a major. She was in a major deficit when I looked at the numbers last night. We could have a third of the council new starting, when we start up here in January. And of course, that was from 4 years ago when there was a major turnover in the city council. So, and actually, that was also 2 years ago when there was major turnover in the city council. It seems like the pendulum is swinging very, very quickly back and forth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do think it's hard to have so much turnover. I think it takes a while to get your feet underneath you. And I'm hopeful that I'll be a quick learner, and my experience in city government will allow me to hit the ground running quicker than most. But there's a lot to learn. And when you're on city council, you have to sort of have a decent understanding of basically all the different issues that are going to come before you, and getting to have these deep connections in your community. Building those trusted relationships, that all takes time. You can't just do that overnight. So, yeah, I will work with whoever is on city council. Kind of to the original point, I see myself as a progressive, and so I will definitely be bringing that progressive lens. But at the end of the day, you try to find consensus with who you can, right? So for one example, like, it was pretty shocking to me that there was a very close vote on capital gains tax last year. Councilmember Moore proposed a capital gains tax. I think she surprised a lot of people, and it almost passed. And that's something that I would support. But that's, just one of those issues that was not necessarily on the radar as possible. People, I think, again, just kind of, there's sort of a broad brush that you might paint. Oh, this council would never, none of the council members would support a capital gains tax, or, other than Councilmember Rink. And it turned out that's not necessarily true, right? So I think having that open mind, having an open dialogue, I think.
Why would you support a capital gains tax?
Because we have an upside down tax code in our state. So, we're described, or the statistics show that we have the 49th, most regressive tax code in the U.S., meaning that we tax working folks and the lowest income more than the wealthiest. So in Washington, we tax the lowest income about 14% of their income, and that's in sales taxes and property taxes. And then the wealthiest pay something closer to like 3.5% of their income in state taxes. And so that, to me, that's it's immoral. It's also just bad public policy to be taxing working folks and the lowest income the most. So the capital gains tax is at the state level is how we actually went from 50th most regressive to 49th. That passing the capital gains tax, plus we provided tax relief to do the working families tax credit. And so one thing that I would fully support is not just raising taxes on the people that can afford the most, but also providing tax relief. So, expanding on something like the working families tax credit. I actually heard Councilmember Hollingsworth talking about she would support a universal basic income if we were going to raise new revenues. And I didn't hear the whole discussion, but that was something that was very exciting to me, because there's strong evidence that something like universal basic income has really good results in terms of sort of the return on the investment. And so it's not just it's not always just raising taxes. It's also, and I'm out talking to a lot of seniors and folks that are struggling with the cost of property taxes. And it's frustrating that every time we, want to fund something, it's always a new levy. And, I basically support the goals of all these new levies. But at the same time, I wish we could fund things in a different way, in a more progressive way, so that it's not always impacting our, homeowners. And tenants also are paying these property taxes, not directly, but indirectly. Landlords are paying them, and they're going to be passing on those taxes to tenants as well. And so if there's a better way, I think progressive taxes are how we should be funding our essential services, and capital gains is one of those that I'm a strong fan of.
His position on capital gains, and you're listening to Eddie Lin, who is a candidate for the Seattle City Council District Position 2 over here in Southeast Seattle, where your community radio station is the epicenter, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. And so glad that he has been able to join us today. Eddie, when I ran for the state legislature in 1998, growing up here in the neighborhood, being a very, very proud Black man, being a very, very proud Latino man. My father from Puerto Rico, my mother, a Black woman, attended Garfield High School, sent her son to O'Day High School. It's interesting how the community perceives its elected officials, its potential elected leaders, and how the community wants you to speak to the issues in a certain manner. And I know that you come from that mixed race background like I do, and you are probably dancing with this at times, because I'm sure that there are community leaders in the Asian American community and certain aspects of our communities here in Central and Southeast Seattle. And, and a lot of people who I have spoken to are hoping for an Asian American to balance out our diversity on the council, but that means you have to speak to the community in a certain way. How have you been able to balance that conversation in your own mind?
Yeah, I mean, I do think, representation is really important. And yet I think it's what's tricky and is that we have such a diverse community, right? Here in District 2. And so, yeah, and which is wonderful. I mean, that's what I think a lot of us love about District 2. And so no one person can represent the diversity of our district based on their own lived experience. You have to sort of draw from your lived experience to do your best to understand where other people are coming from. And really, I also just think it's really important that we be careful not to treat our different communities as a monolith. There's a lot of diversity, within our different communities, within the Asian American community. There's a lot of, different ethnicities. And so, but I think what people respect is somebody who is willing to be humble enough to learn, and who's going to show up and do the hard work, and not come in with preconceived ideas based on their own lived experience, or just are just going to fight for some narrow portion of the community. We need to, if you're running for city council for this district, you're representing the whole community, and that's really important that you're out there building those connections.
I saved this question for last, and you have about 45 seconds. So, but I couldn't run from it, and I want you to answer it the best you can. And obviously, you have that legal mind, so I'm sure you will. The person who sat in your seat before, who sat in District 2, Bruce Harrell. What were your thoughts when you saw those results of that particular election?
I mean, I think the whole ballot, up and down the ballot, was pretty shocking. It was certainly, I think progressives were pretty excited about the results. I think it's going to be a really interesting race. I mean, I think it's always good to have a real race, right? I think when people don't have a real challenger and just kind of get reelected, I don't think that benefits the community. So super excited to see, I think it's going to be a quick turnaround here, but excited to see the two of them debate and put a vision forward, a positive vision for what they're going to do for our community.
Well, this is a gentleman who certainly he will be debating, and he will be speaking to the issues here in District 2, where the headquarters of Rainier Avenue Radio is, and the headquarters or the epicenter of where Juan on Rainier is, right here in the center of the Rainier Valley. So we look forward to seeing how this campaign develops. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Thank you for your candor. Thank you for your interest in coming, and thank you for just really making it a delightful conversation.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank Rainier Avenue Radio. I mean, it's so important to have a community radio to inform the community for the sports coverage, high school sports coverage, love. But this is, what we need to, it's to have this dialogue. So thank you.
He is Eddie Lin, and you will see him over the next couple of months as he starts to head for November. So thank you so much for your time and attention. Hope you enjoyed the conversation, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Juan on Rainier.
Thank you.